Picture this: a sweltering courtroom in Savannah, Georgia, where a cocky judge is about to cross swords with Pam Bondi, a prosecutor who never flinches. A simple case spirals into a clash that ends with handcuffs snapping shut, right in front of a gasping crowd. Want to know how it unfolds? Hit that subscribe button, and let's dive into this electrifying tale. The oak doors of Chatham County Courthouse swung open with a groan, and Pam Bondi stepped through, her heels striking the hardwood floor like a war drum. The air hung heavy with the damp breath of the Savannah River. Just blocks away, its earthy tang mixing with the scent of polished wood and time-worn leather. Sunlight sliced through the tall, arched windows, painting golden streaks across the room and sparking off the brass fixtures. Outside, the late morning hummed with the clatter of horse-drawn carriages on cobblestone streets, a lazy southern rhythm clashing with the storm brewing inside these walls. Bondi adjusted her blazer, her piercing eyes cutting through the haze. She was here to bury Ethan Caldwell, a slick real estate kingpin whose charm masked a fortune built on stolen millions, taxpayer dollars meant for Savannah's riverfront revival. Her briefcase hit the table with a thud that echoed, a bold declaration in the hushed room. She'd spent months on this, nights hunched over ledgers, chasing shadows through a web of lies. This wasn't just a case, it was a reckoning. The courtroom buzzed as spectators shifted in their seats. Clara Hensley, the clerk, sat at her desk, glasses low, her pen poised over her ledger, watching with a hawk's focus. Tom Grady, a scrappy reporter from the Savannah Morning News, scribbled in the back, his nose twitching for a headline. Then, the side door creaked, and Judge Everett Langston stormed in, his robe flaring like a dark wing, silver hair glinting under the lights. "All rise," the bailiff bellowed. Chairs scraped as the room obeyed. Langston climbed to his bench, settling in with a king's swagger. His fingers tapped the wood, slow and deliberate, as he flipped a file open, ignoring Bondi. Silence stretched, thick, a calculated flex of power. Finally, his drawl rolled out, heavy with southern bite. "Ms. Bondi, I reckon you've got something to say. Better not be wasting my time, or Savannah's." Chuckles rippled from the defense table, where Caldwell lounged, smirking in his crisp suit, his lawyer Henry Voss nodding smugly. Bondi stood tall, unfazed. "Your Honor," she fired back, voice sharp as a blade. "This is about millions stolen from this city. I've got the proof." Langston's lip curled, his eyes cold. "Stolen millions? That's your play. Grandstand in for the papers? Spare me, Ms. Bondi." The barb struck, sharp and low. Tom's pen froze. Clara's gaze flicked up. Bondi's jaw tightened, but her tone stayed ice cool. "With respect, Judge, corruption's no play. It's a crime. And Savannah deserves the truth." She reached for a stack of records, holding them high. "These papers." Langston's fist crashed down, a boom shaking the room. "Papers? You think I'll choke on your damn files, girl?" "Girl." The word spat out venomous, a gut punch. A gasp broke the air. Caldwell's smirk grew, his fingers drumming. Voss chuckled low. Bondi froze, the insult burning, then set the stack down, slow, her eyes boring into Langston's. "Your Honor," she said, voice low, lethal, "duck the truth if you want. Savannah won't." Silence clamped down. Langston's fingers stilled, his glare narrowing. "Watch your mouth, Miss Bondi. This is my court, and I don't tolerate troublemakers." She didn't blink. Her hand hovered over a briefcase, steady, daring. "Then let's see what your court makes of this." Tension snapped like a live wire, the room holding its breath for the explosion to come. The hum of the Chatham County Courthouse grew louder as Pam Bondi stood firm, her hand still resting on that briefcase, her words hanging in the air like a loaded gun. Judge Everett Langston's growl lingered, his warning about troublemakers sizzling in the thick Savannah heat. The golden light streaming through the tall windows shifted, casting long shadows that danced across the hardwood floor, as if the room itself braced for what was coming. Outside, the Savannah River flowed steady and silent, its murky waters a stark contrast to the fire igniting inside these walls. Bondi's eyes never left Langston's, her defiance a quiet storm brewing beneath her cool exterior. She knew this moment, his jab, her retort, was just the spark. The real blaze was about to roar. Clara Hensley's pen scratched faintly at her desk, her glasses glinting as she stole a glance at Bondi, a flicker of curiosity in her steady gaze. Tom Grady, hunched in the back, scribbled faster, his wiry frame leaning forward as if pulled by the tension. Ethan Caldwell shifted in his seat, his smirk faltering for a split second, his fingers pausing mid-tap. His lawyer, Henry Voss, adjusted his tie, a smug huff escaping his lips. The gallery rustled, jurors, spectators, a murmur of unease rippling through like a tide. Bondi took a slow breath, the damp air sticking to her lungs, and stepped forward. "Your Honor," she said, voice slicing through the buzz. "These records show payments funneled through Caldwell's company, triple what the city approved." She slapped the stack onto the projector, the numbers glaring bright on the screen behind her. Gasps peppered the room. Langston leaned forward, his sneer twisting into something harder. "You got a lot of nerve, Ms. Bondi, dragging your fancy charts in here," he snapped, his drawl dripping with scorn. "This ain't a damn schoolroom. Get to the point." Bondi didn't blink. She flipped to the next page, her movements crisp, deliberate. "The point, Judge, is theft, plain and simple. Savannah's money vanished, and I've got more." She tapped the briefcase, her tone daring him to test her. Langston's fist clenched, his knuckles whitening against the dark wood of the bench. "More? You think I'm impressed by your little show?" he barked, voice rising. "This is my court, and I say what matters." The room jolted. Tom's pen scratched wild. Clara's head snapped up, her ledger forgotten. Henry Voss leaned over to Caldwell, whispering fast, but Caldwell's eyes stayed locked on Bondi, his smirk now a thin, uneasy line. She met Langston's glare head-on, unflinching. "What matters," she shot back, "is the truth. And you're dodging it." "Why?" The question landed like a punch. A hush swallowed the room, the air so thick you could choke on it. Langston's jaw twitched, his cold eyes narrowing to slits. "Dodgin'?" he growled, leaning in, his voice low and venomous. "You're pushing your luck, girl. Keep talking, see where it gets you." Bondi's lips curved, a flicker of steel in her calm. "Oh, I will, Your Honor," she said, voice steady lethal. "Because Savannah's watching, and they're not blind." She pulled another file from her briefcase, slamming it down with a crack that echoed off the walls. "Here's a contract," she announced, her words ringing out, signed by Caldwell's firm, approved for $2 million. "But the ledger?" She flipped it open, jabbing a finger at the numbers. $5 million paid out. "Where'd it go, Judge?" The gallery erupted, whispers swelling into a roar. Tom leapt to his feet, shouting, "That's front-page gold." Clara's pen clattered to her desk, her hands trembling. Caldwell's face paled, his fingers gripping the table. Voss shot up. "Objection. This is speculation." But Langston waved him off, his glare fixed on Bondi, his breath heavy. "You think you can waltz in here?" Langston snarled, throwing papers and accusations like some big city hotshot. "I'll bury this nonsense right now." He pounded the bench again, the sound a thunderclap. Bondi didn't budge. "Bury it," she fired back, voice rising, sharp as a blade. "You can't bury what's already dug up. Savannah's money gone, and I'm just warming up." She leaned in, eyes blazing. "Tell me, Judge, why were you so quick to shut this down?" The room froze. Langston's face darkened, a vein pulsing at his temple. Clara stared, wide-eyed, her breath caught. Tom scribbled like a man possessed, ink smudging his fingers. Caldwell whispered frantically to Voss, his cool cracking. Langston's voice dropped to a hiss, barely audible over the hum. "You're treading on thin ice, Ms. Bondi, real thin." She straightened, unflinching, her hand brushing her briefcase once more. "Good thing I brought a pickaxe," she said, cool and cutting, her words a promise of ruin. The air snapped with tension, every eye locked on the clash. Bondi, unyielding, Langston, seething. Something was unraveling, fast and fierce, and the courthouse walls seemed to lean in, waiting for the next blow to land. The Chatham County Courthouse quaked as Pam Bondi's last words, her pickaxe vow, cut through the air like a razor, sharp and unyielding. Judge Everett Langston's hiss, thin ice, slithered through the room, a venomous echo that tightened every throat. The golden sunlight from the Savannah sky faded as thick clouds rolled over the river outside, casting jagged, restless shadows across the scuffed hardwood floor, as if the old building itself felt the fracture splitting its heart. The tension snapped like a frayed wire, sparking in the humid haze, every breath a fragile thread. Bondi stood tall, her hand brushing that battered briefcase, her eyes locked on Langston's with a predator's calm. She'd thrown the gauntlet down hard. Now, it was his turn to swing. Clara Hensley's glasses caught the dim light, her ledger forgotten, her fingers clenched white around her pen as she stared at Bondi, a flicker of awe breaking her stoic mask. Tom Grady's scribbles turned wild, ink smearing as he muttered, "This is it. This is the damn break." Ethan Caldwell's cool crumbled, his pale knuckles digging into the table, his urgent whisper to Henry Voss slicing the air. Voss tugged his tie, his smug grin replaced by a grimace, sweat beading on his brow. The gallery buzzed. A juror coughed nervously. A spectator shifted, whispers swelling into a restless tide. Bondi stepped forward, heels clicking like a metronome of doom, and slapped a fresh document onto the projector. The screen blazed, revealing a contract, a signature scrawled in bold ink that sucked the air from the room. "Your Honor," she said, voice ringing out, clear and commanding. "This is the smoking gun, a contract greenlit by the city for $2 million signed by you." "You." The word hit like a sledgehammer, shattering the silence. Langston's face locked up, his sneer vanishing, his cold gray eyes widening in a flash of shock before snapping into slits. The gallery detonated, whispers erupting into shouts. Tom bolted upright, voice cracking with glee. "That's Langston's signature. Holy hell, she's got him." Clara's pen clattered to the floor, her hands flying to her mouth as she stammered. I remember that one. April last year, it came through my desk. It was strange rushed. Bondi whirled to Clara, pouncing on the crack. "You saw this, Miss Hensley? You processed it." Her voice was sharp, electric, yanking every gaze to the clerk. Clara nodded, her voice quaking but resolute. Yes, I did. It wasn't normal, too fast, too quiet." The room lurched. Jurors leaned forward, mouths gaping. Caldwell's face drained to ash, his fingers clawing the table's edge. Voss shot up. "Objection. She's no witness." But Bondi spun back to Langston, cutting through the noise. "Not normal, Judge. Care to explain why your name's tied to a deal that ballooned to $5 million, with 3 unaccounted for?" Langston's fist crashed down, a thunderclap rattling the bench. "Enough," he roared, his drawl splintering into a snarl. "You're out of line, Miss Bondi. That paper's a fake, a filthy lie." His voice broke, raw with rage, but his eyes flicked to the exit, to Caldwell, a twitch of panic betraying him. Bondi didn't flinch. She stepped closer, voice dropping low, lethal. "A lie? Then why's Miss Hensley shaking? Why's Caldwell crumbling? You signed it, Judge, and I've got the receipts." She yanked another file from her briefcase, tossing it down with a slap that reverberated off the walls like a gunshot. "Here's the bank transfer," she declared, tone icy, relentless. $5 million wired to Caldwell's shell company, 2 days after your signature hit that contract. Coincidence? The screen flared again, numbers glaring like a spotlight on Langston's guilt. The gallery burst, shouts, gasps, a juror gasping. "What in God's name?" Tom leapt onto his bench, hollering, "This is corruption, raw and real. Front page, baby." Clara sank back, whispering, "Oh Lord, I knew it felt wrong, all those late-night filings." Caldwell's head dropped, his hands trembling like leaves in a storm. Voss grabbed his arm, hissing, "Stay calm, you fool." Langston's face twisted, flushed red with fury, veins throbbing at his temples like a ticking bomb. "You're finished, Miss Bondi," he bellowed, pounding the bench with both fists, the wood groaning under the force. "I'll have you disbarred for this. This damn circus." His voice shook the chandelier, crystals tinkling faintly above. Bondi met his glare, unbowed, her voice rising over the chaos like a clarion call. "A circus? No, Judge, this is justice, unmasked. And you're center stage." She pointed at him, finger steady, accusing. "Why'd you sign it? Who got paid?" The room spun. Every eye pinned on Langston, his breath heaving, his control slipping through his fingers like sand. He leaned forward, spit flying as he snarled, "You've got no proof, just smoke and mirrors. I'll bury this case, and you with it." His words thundered, but they rang hollow, desperation creeping into his tone like a cornered animal's whine. Bondi smiled, cold and cutting, her eyes glinting with steel. "Bury it? Too late. Savannah's awake now, and they see you." She tapped her briefcase, slow, deliberate, each tap a heartbeat of doom. "And I'm not done digging." Clara's eyes widened, a tear streaking her cheek as she murmured, "I should have said something back then." Tom shouted, "Keep going, Bondi. Tear it wide open." The air pulsed with raw energy, the courthouse trembling as secrets clawed their way into the light. Langston's mask was slipping fast, and the truth was breaking free, jagged and unstoppable. The Chatham County Courthouse pulsed with raw, electric fury as Pam Bondi's final taunt, "I'm not done digging," ignited the air like a match to gasoline. Judge Everett Langston's mask dangled by a thread, his hollow threat to bury her echoing off the walls, a desperate roar swallowed by the truth clawing free. Shadows stretched long and dark across the hardwood floor as the Savannah sky thickened outside, the river's muddy breath seeping through the cracked windows, heavy with the scent of rain and reckoning. The room teetered on a razor's edge, every eye wide, every heart pounding in frantic rhythm. Bondi stood unyielding, her fingers still tapping that battered briefcase, a slow, relentless drumbeat of doom. Langston's glare burned with rage, but his hands shook, a king crumbling before his court, his throne slipping from his grasp. Clara Hensley slumped at her desk, tears streaking her weathered cheeks, her whisper, "I should have said something," a frail confession lost in the swelling chaos. Tom Grady stood atop his bench, shouting over the din, "She's got him dead to rights. This is history unfolding." His ink-stained hands waved his notebook like a flag of triumph, his voice hoarse with exhilaration. Ethan Caldwell's face was a mask of ash, his trembling fingers clawing at the table's edge, his whisper to Henry Voss a frantic plea, "Do something, damn it now." Voss hissed back, his voice tight with panic, "Shut up, we're sunk if you crack." The gallery roared, jurors gasping, spectators yelling, a tidal wave of shock crashing through the pews like a storm surge. Bondi seized the moment, her voice slicing through like a blade through flesh. "Your Honor, you call it smoke? Then listen to this." She yanked a small recorder from her briefcase and hit play with a flick of her thumb. Langston's voice boomed through the room, gruff and unmistakable. "Move the money. Keep her off those ledgers." Static crackled, then silence. A silence so deep it swallowed every sound but the thud of racing hearts. Langston's eyes bulged, his jaw dropping open, his breath a ragged wheeze that echoed in the stillness. The gallery exploded, screams, curses, a juror shouting, "That's him. That's his damn voice. I'd know it anywhere." Tom hollered, "Tape's the nail in the coffin. Print it now." Clara sobbed, her hands trembling as she choked out, "Oh, God, I typed those orders. I didn't know what they meant." Caldwell bolted upright, his chair scraping the floor with a screech, voice breaking in panic. I'll talk. Just get me out of this." Bondi's gaze snapped to Caldwell, cold and cutting as a winter wind. "You'll talk? Good, start with him." She pointed at Langston, her finger a spear of justice piercing the air. Langston lurched forward, slamming the bench with a force that rattled the walls, his roar shaking the chandelier above. "This is a setup. A damn fraud. That tape's fake. I'll prove it." His spit flew, his face purple with rage, but his voice cracked, panic bleeding through like blood from a fresh wound. Bondi stepped closer, voice steady, deadly calm. Fake? Then why's your clerk crying? Why's your buddy begging? You're caught, Judge, red-handed and sinking fast. She tossed the recorder down, its clatter a gunshot in the chaos, and turned to the back of the room, giving a sharp, decisive nod that cut through the uproar. The side door burst open with a bang, and Jake Tillman, a broad-shouldered deputy with a steel jaw and eyes like flint, stormed in, his boots pounding the floor like a war march. Everett Langston, he barked, voice booming over the chaos. You're under arrest. Obstruction, fraud, conspiracy. Gasps ripped through the air, jurors clutching their chests, spectators leaping to their feet, phones flashing as they scrambled to capture the moment. Langston reeled back, his robe flapping wildly. You can't do this. This is my court, my rules. Jake didn't flinch, pulling cuffs from his belt with a swift tug. Not anymore, sir. Hands out now. The metal gleamed in his grip as he advanced, his shadow looming large over the bench like a harbinger of doom. Langston swung his arm wide, knocking files off the bench, papers fluttering like wounded birds to the floor in a chaotic swirl. This is madness. I'm the law here. You'll all pay for this outrage. His voice broke, a desperate howl that rang hollow against the truth bearing down on him. Jake grabbed his wrist, twisting it back with a grunt of effort. Not today, you're done, old man. The cuffs snapped shut. Click, click, a sound that pierced the room like a thunderbolt, locking Langston's fate in cold, unyielding steel. The gallery screamed, Tom yelling, She did it. Bonnie took him down, right here, right now. Clara buried her face in her hands, weeping softly. It's over, finally over, thank God. Bondi stood still, her eyes fixed on Langston, voice low, firm as granite. Justice doesn't bend, not even for you. Jake hauled Langston off the bench, his robe tangling around his legs as he stumbled, his growl fading to a pitiful whimper. You'll pay, Bondi, you'll pay for this. She didn't blink, her words ice-cold, unshakable. No, Judge. Savannah's been paying too long. That stops now. The room spun, shock, triumph, disbelief crashing together in a deafening wave. Caldwell's sobs filled the air, his head in his hands. Voss's curses drowned out by the crowd's roar. The courthouse walls seemed to shudder, the weight of decades lifting as Langston was dragged away through the side door, his reins shattered in a heartbeat of steel and truth. Bondi turned, her gaze steady, the storm quieting behind her eyes. This was her moment, but the fight wasn't over yet. The Chatham County Courthouse quivered as the side door slammed shut behind Judge Everett Langston, the metallic click of his cuffs reverberating like a gunshot in the stunned silence. Rain began to tap against the tall windows, a gentle rhythm from the Savannah River seeping through the cracked panes, cooling the air thick with tension. Shadows softened across the scuffed hardwood floor, flickering under the gray light filtering in, as if the old building itself released a pent-up sigh. Pam Bondi stood unwavering at the plaintiff's table, her hands planted firmly on her weathered briefcase, her steely gaze locked on the now-empty bench. A throne of corruption toppled in a heartbeat. Triumph burned quietly in her eyes, a fierce ember glowing beneath her unshakable calm. Clara Hensley rose from her desk near the bench, her hands trembling as she wiped tears from her weathered cheeks, her voice quivering yet resolute. Ms. Bondi, I should have spoken up sooner. All those years I stayed quiet, let it fester. Bondi turned, her expression softening as she stepped closer, her tone warm but steady, grounding the moment. Clara, you spoke today. That's what broke this wide open. You're not alone in this anymore. Clara's lips trembled, a faint smile piercing her sorrow as she clutched her ledger tighter. Savannah's my home. I couldn't let it rot any longer. Not after today, not after what I've seen. Tom Grady leapt from the gallery's back row, his notebook flapping wildly in his ink-stained hands as he rushed forward, his voice crackling with urgency. Bondi, you just gave me the scoop of a lifetime. Langston's done. Finished. What's your next play? His eyes gleamed with a reporter's fevered zeal, his pen poised like a loaded gun. Bondi's lips curved into a faint, steely smile, her calm unshaken by the chaos swirling around her. We dig deeper, Tom. This is just the first crack in their wall. He scribbled fast, grinning wide as ink smudged his fingers. You're a damn legend. Savannah's going to sing your name for this. Bondi shook her head, her voice firm, resolute. Not mine, the truths. That's the real hero here, always will be. Ethan Caldwell slumped at the defense table, his sobs echoing in the charged stillness, his once crisp suit now a crumpled wreck stained with sweat and fear. Henry Voss hovered over him, his voice a low, urgent hiss. Get a grip, Ethan. We can still cut a deal if you hold it together. Caldwell's head jerked up, his eyes wild with desperation, his voice shattering the air. A deal? After that tape? Langston's gone. Henry, I'm not taking this fall alone. He pointed a shaky finger at the door where Langston had been dragged out, his plea raw and frantic. Bondi stepped in, her voice a cold, sharp blade slicing through his panic. You want out, Caldwell? Then talk right now. Who else was in on it? Caldwell froze, his breath hitching, then nodded rapidly, words spilling out in a frantic rush. Langston, he led it all. Councilmen, builders, I'll name them all. Just shield me, please. Voss grabbed his shoulder, his face twisting as he snarled. You idiot, shut your mouth. Bondi's gaze pinned him, icy and unyielding, cutting through the fray. Too late. Voss, he's spilling. You're next if you don't start talking. Voss's face drained of color, his defiance crumbling as he sank back. Mute. The room held its breath, watching the web unravel. Bondi faced the vacant bench, her voice rising, commanding the space. I demand a full investigation. Langston's down, but the rot's still there, eating at Savannah. Clara stepped forward, clutching a stack of yellowed files, her tone steady now. I've got records, old ones, payments, secrets, for you. Bondi took them, her reply sharp. Thank you, Clara. We start now. Rain pounded harder, a chorus of renewal against the glass. Bondi turned to the crowd, voice low, resonant. Savannah's been crushed by greed today. We broke it. No one's untouchable. Not here. Cheers erupted. Tom shouted. Front page gold. She paused, Rain underscoring her vow. We're not done, not by a long shot. Clara whispered, for Savannah. Keep it up. Bondi nodded, fierce, always for Savannah. The room swelled with pride, rain gilding the river outside. Justice had struck. The fight was just beginning.